This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
Attention homeowners. Due to upcoming government regulations, the current energy efficiency ratings for HVAC systems will change. Current inventory cannot be sold after December 31st. As the year 2023 starts, customers can expect to pay an average of 30% more for a new HVAC unit that will meet the new government regulations.
So what does this mean for you, the customer? There's no better time to purchase a new HVAC system. AAA Heating and Air must empty their warehouse to make room for the new systems. No deals will be turned down. With their 15-year parts and labor warranty plus guaranteed financing, they have made it possible for anyone to get a new system.
Call today and enjoy your new home comfort as quickly as tomorrow. But you can only get this special deal by calling 803-677-1500. AAA Heating and Air wants to give you their best deal possible on a new HVAC unit, but you have to call today. 803-677-1500.
And tell them you heard about this deal on 107.5 The Game's Gamecock Central podcast.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler.
This has been in the works for a while. We're really excited to officially have the Gamecock Central Hour.
Chris Clark.
And JJ has accepted an invite to the Senior Bowl already, which is awesome, the Reese's Senior Bowl.
And Wes Mitchell.
I think he's well above 200 into like the 210 range. A dude in the weight room, too, like from a strength standpoint.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
11:01 Friday morning, and welcome into the Gamecock Central Hour. Pearson Fowler, Wes Mitchell here with you. Chris Clark will be back in on Monday, as will Coach P Tweets. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon. I say that not ironically because I love a rainy day every once in a while. How you feel about rainy days, Wes? Is it bumming you out?
I mean, it's all right. It's all right.
It's all right.
I'm not gonna let it get me down.
Good.
I can take one rainy day. I don't like when these things settle in just like a rainy week.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
Give me a rainy day, I'll be all right.
I want like I love a rainy day, especially if it's on a weekend and it's just like, all right, I'm not getting anything done today. I'm just gonna like watch a couple movies, make some popcorn. That's the best. South Carolina is practicing later this afternoon. 2:54 is when the flex period is scheduled to start. I guess they'll move inside if it's raining.
Yeah.
If it's wet, will it still be outside?
I got to think, looking outside right now, I got to think we're inside today.
Okay.
You don't want to get anybody, stepping wrong, slipping. You're starting to get closer and closer to kickoff. There might be some old heads out there saying, a little rain never hurt nobody, but actually it can directly lead to people getting hurt. So I got to think there's about a 99% chance that they're inside today.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably better for us. I feel like it's easier to see everything in the practice facility than it is spread out over the two fields. So for the periods that are open to us today, maybe we'll get a little better sense, and they'll be in full pads.
Could be fun. Could be a good view. So you're going out there again?
I will be out there again.
Sweet.
I mean, I go out there whenever I can. It's just, when it coincides.
Normally behind that glass.
Huh?
You're normally behind that glass over there when they're out there practicing.
I know, yeah, which is a shame. But I'm glad to get to see it. Yesterday was their first practice in full pads. Tomorrow is their first scrimmage. Well, actually, let's start there. We have a few recruiting notes to get to. I want to talk to you about the linebacking core as well. But with the first scrimmage tomorrow, this is going to be very instructive. I think probably in the next week, with the scrimmage being tomorrow, is when you will start to see South Carolina get an idea of when the depth or how the depth chart is being settled. So is tomorrow still just throw as many guys into the mix in the scrimmage as possible to see what works? Or will you see the coaching staff already start to say, here are the ones, here are the twos, here are the threes?
That's a good question. I'll be curious to see what Beamer says about that. He is speaking after the scrimmage. It seems like your first scrimmage most of the time is still, hey, we're giving a bunch of guys an opportunity. But obviously the closer and closer, so it's August 12th right now, but closer and closer you get to game day, like game week, you see coaches start to really narrow that thing down and kind of start to think, hey, this freshman maybe isn't helping right off the bat this year. You start to kind of pare down the list of guys that are actually getting those reps in practice. But generally it just feels like scrimmage one, you're still going to give most of the guys an opportunity. I'll be curious to see, just from a kind of operation standpoint, logistics standpoint, is this going to be a scrimmage where you still have coaches on the field, like doing instruction and helping guys get lined up? Or is this going to be a scrimmage where you kind of throw everybody into the fire, put coaches up in the box, coaches are on the sideline as opposed to really instructing and just kind of see what happens? Generally, you're going to have at least a scrimmage or two that is basically a game day simulation where you're going to put the headsets on, you're going to work. That's actually, it's big for just the guys who are having to signal in the plays on the sideline as well.
Right.
So I haven't heard what this one's going to look like. It'll be interesting to see if they're like, hey, maybe they say we feel far enough along to go ahead and kind of do this as a simulation, or maybe they'll say, let's do a first scrimmage, more along the lines of a little bit more glorified practice. But this is kind of the start of kind of moving day where you're looking at, all right, which guys are going to help this year and which guys aren't.
That's really interesting. And in terms of breaking guys in, kind of going the slow route, the more kind of hold your hand route to the scrimmage, it's just Sterling Lucas and Jody Wright that aren't familiar with the specifics of Carolina's game day operation. Although I guess both of those guys were both of those guys hired by the spring game, or was Jody after?
No, they were both there for the spring.
Okay. All right. So they've been through the ops of it once. In terms of the players on the two deep, only Corey Rucker and Austin Stogner pretty much will have not been through it. It's so funny how different things are because last year was first time for Shane Beamer, first time for all of his staffers, so many new players, and there are a lot of new faces, but there is so much more familiarity. It feels like night and day, and I wonder if it will not allow them to just jump in and say, all these guys were here. He's an old vet. He's not going to be thrown off by it. Corey will be fine. Everybody else, this is kind of old hat for them.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think you can overstate how important that should be for South Carolina this year. All the stuff that we never or rarely think about and never talk about, just even just a game day and how it's scheduled and the just sort of process. Probably the thing, if you're an assistant coach, you take for granted, and then when you become the head coach, you're like, wow, there is a ton I have to think about every single day from a scheduling standpoint and just logistics of getting here to there. Beamer, we talked about earlier this week, Beamer talking about, we practiced the alma mater in the hotel room. The fan tailgating in Gamecock Park, putting back drinks, we don't think of that stuff, but that's all something that's on the plate of a first-year head coach. Beamer has been asked, doesn't it feel like the most asked question this entire offseason? Well, what did you learn about yourself and your team and, your style as a coach in year one? And it's a cliched question, but, there's some value in that question in that it points out, hey, there's a lot of stuff you had never done. And in any industry, you may think you have it all figured out, but when you have to go do something for the first time, you realize what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So I've got to think from everything from scrimmages to practice schedules to game day plans. Year two is just going to be a lot more comfortable for everybody involved. And to your point, man, you've got a lot of guys who have been here. A lot of your new guys were here in the spring, and even those kids are older guys that have played.
Devontae Reed's probably 22-ish right now anyway, right? He's also
very
played
mature,
a lot of football.
Mature guys.
Reed, Rattler, Beal Smith. He was a grad transfer, right?
Yeah, they've been through game days, man. So it is different than just, last year, new head coach, new OC, new DC, new special teams coordinator, new everything. So now, for the most part, all those, and Sterling Lucas, Jody Wright, they've done a fantastic job by all indications doing their job to coach up their positions. But as far as the logistics of it, them being here isn't going to change much as far as how the offense, defense, or special teams operates as well. It's not like you're sitting there saying, well, brand new defense or brand new offense. It's all going to be the same.
Have you seen a copy of a game day schedule internally?
I have not. The closest thing to that was way back early Muschamp. It was actually, from my perspective, one of the coolest things Muschamp did was he had a true behind-the-scenes spring game where a couple of I
was there.
Yeah, it was like a media guy from each outlet or so got picked, and you were behind the scenes for the entire process.
Yeah.
And I ended up on the sideline with a headset on, listening to T-Rob call plays, basically. So that was actually really, really cool. And it is, I mean, everything is as you would expect, locked in like to a T. We make fun of 254 practice, but that's the way it is on game day. Like at this exact moment, this is when this thing is starting.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking, because I wonder if that's like, 10:17 to 10:19, practice the alma mater, 10:19 to 10:21, use the bathroom before you get on the bus. Like, I imagine it, as much as we're joking about that, like it does seem to be that meticulously scheduled. So, that's I guess that'll be a point of intrigue for me. I hope somebody asks Shane that on Saturday afternoon, because I'm just very curious mechanically how things are going to change for South Carolina. But a couple scrimmages, 3 scrimmages, and you'll probably get a depth chart after scrimmage number 2, usually 3.
We were actually talking about this the other day. I think last year they did not introduce a public depth chart until the week of game 1.
Like that Tuesday, probably?
Tuesday, when Tuesday is when they put out the game notes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was the first official depth chart.
Okay.
Internally, though,
the
guys themselves will start to have an idea. And, as Preston has pointed out, one of my favorite things about having Preston on the show is he can give you that unique insight of what it is like being in the building. And, he said there's moments, hey, you start to learn, man, I thought I was going to be the guy running out there when they said 1s, and then coach is like, all right, you're with the 2s.
Yeah.
So there may not be an official printed out document with the depth chart yet, but the guys, I feel like very soon will start to kind of get an idea of, hey, I'm in a good place or I'm not.
Well, the 4 of us have talked about it a lot, too. I mean, how many spots really – I mean, the coaches probably know 19 of the 22 guys that are going to be starting for them, I would say, at this point. So you talk about a depth chart internally, like they probably pretty much already have it. And a couple of spots up for grabs, like maybe that right tackle, maybe, your Z receiver, maybe. But by and large, if it's less settled than we think, is that good or bad for South Carolina?
I think in this case, that's probably pretty good, man, because the settled spots, like it actually probably means somebody new has just stepped up and has taken a spot. But I kind of look at it like even when you have these position battles, most of the time, I feel like coaching staffs have a pretty good idea. Oh, this guy's probably going to win this job. Like, there's probably an expectation, even if that coach would never voice it. Like, you want it to be a true battle, right? Like a true competition. But internally, there's probably, all right, this kid's probably going to win this job. I would say there's only a couple where even internally, like I believe that spot besides Zach Pickens, starting defensive tackle spot. Now, I don't know if anything's changed there in the first week, but going in, I think that was a spot where even internally, they felt good about all the options there, but I don't think there was an expectation of this person is going to win it. I think you look at Boogie Huntley, who I think has sort of just been steadily coming on a little bit. You look at MJ Webb, older guy, veteran. You look at Tonka Hemingway, of course, TJ Sanders, the younger guy in there. So, I mean, you got a good group there, and I think they're all going to be fighting it out. Was interesting, though, when we were at open practice, Boogie working in there with the 1s. So.
Well, I was reminded Wednesday night watching that Welcome Home on ESPNU, Boogie with a couple of sacks in the spring game. And seems like he's bulked up a little bit. That's one of the hardest parts, for a lot of people playing on the interior of the line on either side of the scrimmage. It's, getting your weight up and kind of keeping the speed up. I don't know what his numbers actually are, how his measurables have changed, but he looks more like an SEC football player, where a couple of years ago he was coming out of high school. He was like a big high school football player, but now seems to look the part a little bit more in the garnet and black. 803-404-6100. Want to hear from you guys. South Carolina scrimmaging tomorrow, so we'll have thoughts from Shane Beamer, I guess, after that on Saturday, but we'll have a chance to talk about some of those early developments in the depth chart on Monday when we get back. 803-404-6100. Love Chevy phone line, text line, however you guys want to be a part of the show, and you can get either one of us on Twitter at Pearson Fowler, at Wes Mitchell GC. Plenty of Gamecock recruiting to get to as well. The good, the bad, and the ugly in recruiting.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
11:19 Friday morning. Welcome back into the Extra Point, the Gamecock Central Hour, continuing here on 107.5 The Game. Wes Mitchell in studio today. Chris Clark will be back on Monday as the downpour is now officially torrential. Wes, did you look outside during the break?
No, but I am now. Wow.
Yeah, jeez. If you're driving down Gervais Street, like right around downtown area, right on the corner of Sumter and Gervais, it floods. So be careful driving. Like the curb is underwater right now. I think practice will be inside today.
We have raised our percentage from 99% to 100%.
100%, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's confirmed. So last night, an auspicious debut for South Carolina's own Kevin Harris in his first game as a New England Patriot.
Under center on the second and goal to go give. And Harris this time lowering the shoulders up the middle with a dive. And a touchdown, Patriots!
A classic Kevin Harris touchdown, just grit, muscle. And now the additional New England connection with Mike Yuva, sticking with Gamecock Central, doing some stuff with the Pats. Did Mike tell you specifically that he just go up there to follow Kevin?
Well, I noticed like half of Mike's tweets about the Pats game were also about Kevo Harris,
yeah.
And his like pick to click or whatever they call it on his show up there was for Kevin Harris, and I think the one highlight he posted was of Kevin Harris. So yeah, I think you're onto something there, man. But how about, like you said, a classic Kevin Harris run, and he looked explosive too. Like he hit the hole with some intention. It felt like, and that was cool to see. I mean, I'm not Pearson a huge like NFL guy. Like I'm much more of a college guy, but Kevin he seems like somebody who could quietly stick around in the league for a while if he can stay healthy. And the Patriots are probably a good fit for him because not a guy that says a whole lot, just sort of puts his head down, does his job. I think it's a good fit, and that was cool to see him get the first TD, even if it is preseason.
Definitely a good fit. Hard-nosed running style, just protect the football. A little bit of the Muschamp kind of like do your job mentality. But the one thing that's always scary is you never know. Like Bill Belichick's just like, this game we're going to have 6 running backs, and, this game we're going to have 0 running backs. So you do kind of never know.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do think that's it. I mean, it's never bad to land in the best organization in all of professional football. So good to see Kevin Harris. And like you said, yeah, look good. Look good, look healthy. Just disappointing the way the last season went, and to see him follow up a 1,000-yard rushing season. Not that it was a bad season for him. I guess he ended up being Carolina's leading rusher, at least in terms of carries, if not also in terms of yards, but not the swan song that he wanted in Columbia.
No, but the bowl game, I felt like that was one of the first times last year that he looked like the Kevin Harris we're used to seeing. I think the back situation going into last year, him having to come back from that injury and just wasn't quite himself until the latter part of the season, and then you really started to get to see him be himself there late. So I'm happy for him, man. Kind of a guy that wasn't, again, that highly recruited. Even, the year, going back to something Chris said yesterday, the year that he ended up basically leading the SEC in rushing, that was obviously when Marshawn Lloyd got hurt. And I remember that preseason, everybody was talking about Marshawn Lloyd and the excitement level for him and how he was probably going to be the starter. And I made a comment as that season went on. I was like, I don't think the things that Kevin Harris does well necessarily show up in practice in modern day football necessarily when you're not tackling running backs to the ground except for maybe a couple scrimmages. And you're trying to be physical, but his big thing is that he's a freaking load. Like, he's hard to bring down, great balance. You put him in a game setting with some adrenaline going and some actual tackling, and he's a different player in my opinion. So he kind of came out of nowhere. I even remember hearing, literally the source here, this is a long time ago now, it was literally coaches telling me, like, Marshawn Lloyd looks the best of the running backs. And then they were hoping Z White, who had just arrived as a JUCO guy, could step in and be the guy. And then here comes Kevin, just, no nonsense, goes out there and ends up being...
probably didn't say a word all season.
Yeah, but let his running do the talking.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about Kevin, too, and it's interesting how quickly someone goes from being kind of an afterthought to being a superstar. Like, it just takes 10 games, and everyone was like, oh, Kevin Harris, that's cemented in Gamecock history. But going into that season, it was like, Kevin Harris, oh, yeah, that's the guy that had that big run against Coastal. Like, that was the only thing he did, and then he tore a muscle in his pelvis or something like that and missed most of the season. Sounded like an awful injury. But it was so funny because it was like a running joke that season. It's like, oh, yeah, Kevin Harris is going to average, 75 yards a carry because 10 games into the season, he had like one carry for 75 yards. And it was like, not 75 yards, but it turns out, as much as that was Coastal, as much as that was one run, as much as that was last year, it's like, oh, yeah, this guy actually is pretty good.
Yeah, he's really good, man. And I think... Are you thinking about the Charleston Southern game?
Yeah, Charleston Southern.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, because I was trying to pull it up real quick. He had it was like 4 rushes for like 3 touchdowns or something.
Yeah, it was crazy.
His stat line in that game was insane. Not a very good Charleston Southern team.
Terrible.
That was the big takeaway from that game. But yeah, kind of came out of nowhere, and now he's played in the NFL. And again, I think it's a good spot for him. May have a chance to stick. You never know with running backs. Like, you need luck to stick in the league as a running back. But
I'd say maybe that is the one concern, though, having had, like, I don't think tearing a muscle off your pelvis is like, oh, you got to worry about this guy. He's injury prone. But then, was it a foot injury last year that kind of hampered him? Was it a foot or a...
Well, he had the back deal going into the season. It was
back surgery in the offseason, right. So, that would be the one thing that you do worry about is someone that plays as physical a brand of football as he does. How long could he hold up? But, assuming that he can stay healthy, there's no reason that he shouldn't be able to stick in the league for a while, in my opinion. But you do, I guess, just worry about the health.
Yeah, and that's, man, with running backs, it's such a just physically tough position. Like, I think as far as consistent wear on the body, obviously one of the toughest positions out there. So you need some luck. You need to be at a place where, it's kind of funny. It used to be guys, give me the ball, give me the rock. You kind of want to be somewhere where you split some time and keep the mileage off a little bit. So yeah, we'll see. But definitely pulling for Kevin. I think he handled himself the right way throughout his time at South Carolina.
803-404-6100, Love Chevy phone line, text line at West Mitchell GC. At Pearson Fowler, however you guys want to be a part of the show today. A couple of recruiting notes. One South Carolina prospect that is set to make his announcement in about an hour here, and one decommit from the Gamecocks who's gone ahead and flipped his allegiance to another SEC school. So we'll dig into a little recruiting with Wes next.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
11:31 Friday morning, rainy Friday. The rain is finally slowing, but it rained buckets. I imagine Carolina will be practicing indoors now when they get back into action this afternoon. But Wes Mitchell and I are dry here in the Herndon Chevy studios of 107.5 The Game, talking a lot of Carolina football. Get into a few recruiting notes here for you in just a second, but the Gamecock Central Hour, only possible because of the good people, especially Larry, over at Firehouse Subs.
Yeah, shout out Larry. Advertising works because it's been working as the person delivering the advertising as well. I got to say this, man. Firehouse Subs, the rapid rescue, order online, locations all over the greater Midlands area. I have one over near me on Garners Ferry Road, so here's what I do, man. When we leave here, I hit the rapid rescue right before I walk out. Tell them what I want. Usually club on a sub, no onions, add oil and vinegar, and then I just pick it up on the way home. Can have lunch, very quick, very efficient, and you can call in an order, you can go in, you can stand in line, they'll get it out to you pretty quick anyway, but the best way to do it, in my opinion, just go all in on this whole online ordering thing. Rapid Rescue will tell you exactly what time it's going to be ready. You can pick it up right there on the shelf and be on your way. Again, Firehouse Subs. I guarantee if you're in the Midlands and you're hearing us, there's a Firehouse Subs pretty close to you. So go check them out.
12 locations, a 13th to be open soon. And Chris is really excited for that one, which will be, I guess, in West Columbia. So thanks again to Firehouse Subs. A little recruiting here. So Bakari Swain is a 3-star athlete prospect out of the state of Georgia, and he's expected to make his decision in about an hour. Is that right, Wes?
Yep, 12:30. He'll be announcing, had a official top 6 that includes, I should say, Mississippi State, Maryland, Vanderbilt, Duke, Georgia Tech, and the Gamecocks.
You said included. Is this already a done deal?
Well, no. I posted on our board earlier. He's kind of a low key kid, not like a big self promoter. Kind of keeps to himself. If I had to predict, I would predict South Carolina. I don't have quite as much concrete information as I normally do to feel like completely comfortable and do kind of like the wink, I feel good about the Gamecocks' chances thing. But there's enough floating around out there to think that the most likely choice would be South Carolina. I think Mississippi State was his most recent visit. He took an official to Vanderbilt. Those were a couple of other schools I would say to watch. One of the big questions was also, was he going to be a wide receiver or cornerback in college? And Mississippi State was recruiting him to play receiver. That's Steve Spurrier Jr., actually, is their receivers coach. Oh, wow. So a little connection there, obviously. And, Carolina has been talking to him, it seems like mostly at DB. Torian Gray has been highly involved here. Yeah. My impression is they see him as a guy who actually could do both in Columbia, or do either one, I should say. I don't think they're going to be running him out there on both sides of the ball, but that he ultimately could, if it didn't work out at cornerback, he's got the ability and skill set to play receiver at the next level as well. I saw him at the Under Armour camp in Atlanta, very smooth athlete, has some height at 6'1". He's going to have to, add some strength and muscle at the next level, but if South Carolina gets him, would be a really solid pickup of, a guy with some versatility.
Well, let me ask you this, because it's a running joke that defensive backs are just wide receivers that can't catch, right? But when you have somebody that is an athlete, is it just a matter of filling a position of need, or does South Carolina see something specifically in Swain that they like more at defensive back than wide receiver, or do they not like his wide receiver skills enough to recruit him specifically as a wideout?
Usually it's more like, all right, in this case, Torian Gray being the DB's coach, he's probably said, look, this is my guy. I like him. I want him. And, sometimes you even kind of have, maybe there's a little bit of, not a fight, but
like Justin's like, no, I want him.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, no, we want to recruit him over here. Other times, like with Nicholas Harbor, who, is the best athlete in the country, Harbor may be saying, I like the idea of playing defense, but I like the idea of playing some offense. And both sides look at him and say, this guy's so good. We're just going to all recruit him. We'll figure it out when he gets
here. Tell him what he wants to hear.
It's like if really the guy could play either spot. Like he could excel in either spot when you look at an athlete that is that talented. So, but I think going back to Swain, it's just kind of like, Torian Gray identified him as a guy he wanted. I believe Justin Stepp has been somewhat involved as well. The kid played receiver at the Under Armour camp that I went to. So I think this one, some guys are athletes and you can kind of definitively say, hey, the staff sees him at this position. That's probably what he's going to play and it's probably not going to change. Other times it's more like, this is probably the position he's going to start out at, but there's enough for you to think that, actually, depending on how things play out, he could end up on the other side of the ball.
You mentioned the top 6, and I understand we talked about this earlier this week. Ben Portnoy made like the definitive list in the last couple of years of guys that have come from the DMV to Columbia. It makes sense that in those cases, Carolina would be going head-to-head with Maryland. But you mentioned Maryland in the mix now for Swain, too, and Swain's from Georgia. I feel like Carolina's had more head-to-head recruiting battles with Maryland than North Carolina and Georgia and Clemson and a lot of the other schools around here. What's going on with Maryland and South Carolina? Is it just random?
It's kind of random. Well, with Swain, it is just kind of random. With these other guys, it's just that South Carolina is, they're trying to kind of move into that DMV area. You look at this staff, lots of ties, obviously, to Virginia. When you look at Shane Beamer, you look at Torian Gray, lots of ties to several different Northeast areas when you're talking about Pete Limbo. So it's part of it is just that they want to expand the recruiting footprint a bit, and schools, I feel like more than ever, are going a bit more national, and I include South Carolina in that. Everybody's so interconnected now. The kids are all on Twitter. They all pay attention. They all stay in touch with each other. So you're just seeing South Carolina expand that footprint, and one of the areas they happen to be at, is Maryland, that DMV area. And, in Maryland, it's kind of if Maryland, I'm trying to put this the way it makes sense. If you're a DMV kid and you're, let's say you're a top 10 prospect in Maryland, if you're like an elite 5-star guy, most other than Harbor, that's if you're South Carolina, Alabama's maybe involved, Ohio State's maybe involved. Those guys are difficult to land. But let's say the number 5 kid in Maryland, probably going to be willing to listen to Maryland. But if you have a connection there and you're South Carolina, probably willing to listen to you as well. So if you're South Carolina going into Maryland, you feel like that's a program that you can go toe-to-toe with, even if they have the local advantage. Yeah. You can maybe feel like you can go in there and land a couple of guys. Obviously.
And they have.
Yeah, and obviously, like, you're not feeling like you can go into Alabama and land the guy that Bama wants.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I see what you mean. That's interesting. Kind of flipping the script here, that announcement will be in like 50 minutes or so. So as soon as we get news on what Swain decides, South Carolina or one of the other schools, we'll certainly keep you posted here on 107.5 The Game. This happened Wednesday night. I didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday, but Jaden Robinson, who's a 4-star linebacker prospect out of Florida, has officially flipped, decommitted from South Carolina, went ahead and committed to Florida. He and Pup Howard, was it like the same weekend or kind of within the same week that those guys committed? And it was like, wow, South Carolina grabbed 2 4-star linebackers out of Florida. I don't know if the anticipation was that Robinson was maybe like a less solid commit than Howard to begin with. You had mentioned that Howard has been, along with Dante Reno, like such a proactive member of that class of 2024 in terms of recruiting other guys. But for 2023, excuse me, or 24, whatever class it is. I can't keep track. Were you surprised by the Robinson flip? And is this one that has a chance to flip back the other way?
Was not surprised. This was a situation, I would say, the last few days or so before the flip, the writing was kind of on the wall. Like there were already some, I would say, some signs that this could be possible. That because Florida, it was so weird, man. Florida offered him basically, it was like a day or two before he committed to South Carolina, and before he publicly committed to South Carolina, he had already verbally, told the staff he was going to be a Gamecock. Well, then Florida offers him late, and it was such a weird thing to me. Why are you offering a guy right before he commits? Mm-hmm. And so he commits to South Carolina. He had a long time been sort of leaning to the Gamecocks, but Florida, in-state school, obviously there's some Florida influence at that school, I think, as well. And so it was always something to kind of pay attention to be aware of. But then he actually took a visitor to Florida recently. The communication, I think, between him and South Carolina had sort of started to drop off a little bit. So there were kind of some warning signs there. Mm-hmm. And then the staff, from what I'd heard, just kind of knew this was going to come and had already kind of started to they've already got their attention on some other guys at linebacker as well to kind of fill that spot. So I would not anticipate what I would call like a Cam Upshaw situation. He obviously decommitted, then recommitted very, very quickly after that.
Yeah, and that happened with Anthony Rose last year as well, too, right?
Yeah. So, but in this case, Robinson's already committed to Florida. But both sides, it's kind of at this point, he decommitted, but at this point, it's kind of like a mutual split as far as how it's going forward. Like, I don't think South Carolina's going to be involved anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, like, just a perfect encapsulation of why I don't look at recruiting rankings until, like, December, and why, don't count your chickens before they hatch, or, before guys have signed their, national letter of intent or whatever. It was a couple weeks ago, Carolina had, 17 commits, and 8 of them were 4-stars, and then they lost Upshaw, and then they got Upshaw back, and then they lost Robinson. So there's so much fluctuation there. You mentioned Carolina has its eye on a couple other linebackers. They do specifically want to replace that, or was it when they took him? Was it like you just wanted at least one linebacker and you got that in Howard, and now they can spend that scholarship however they want, or is it specifically they're going to want to replace a linebacker in that class?
Yeah, my impression is they're going to want to add at least one more linebacker to this class, and I think they feel pretty good about being able to do that. I think you always have kind of a rough idea of how many numbers you want at each position. Mm-hmm. Now that too can be fluid. Sometimes that number gets bigger because maybe some guys on campus are like, well, this guy or these two guys may transfer out, so that number starts to grow. Mm-hmm. Maybe some players you were counting on with your current roster don't. You're like, maybe this evaluation wasn't as good as we thought it would be. Yeah. The other side of that can just be if you're in on a player that's too good to turn down, you say, well, we're going to take an extra spot here just because we don't want to miss on this player. And again, not to get too deep into the weeds, but the 25 limit per class is not in play this year anymore. So that's going to potentially have an effect.
And maybe going forward, right? This is a temporary suspension, but I feel like I've heard people say they expect this to just become the norm now, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what changes they continue to implement. It definitely could be permanent. I know it's for this year. I should know this. I want to say they're already saying it's going to be for the next two recruiting cycles. Right. So, but there's been so many rule changes lately.
Hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
Casey hit us in the text line, 803-404-6100. Said, give it a year and Carolina will pick him back up in the portal. Robinson. Could be. I mean, that's the nature of college football. And it was interesting, too. Oh, man, and I can't remember who it was. It was either Lamont Paris or Shane Beamer. One of those guys talking about the transfer portal the other day at a media event. We're talking about, having already recruited some of the guys that are being brought into the fold now. Now, Shane also mentioned, when you pick up somebody like a Jason Brown or EJ Jenkins at the transfer portal, oftentimes that's not someone that was on your radar and no prior relationship. But I think, this will be year 2 now of the transfer portal being in full swing. I think that'll be a big factor. Like a lot of guys that commit, decommit, go somewhere else, if they put their name in the transfer portal, you got to imagine the schools that was their initial commits got to be high up in the priority list.
Yeah, relationships stand up, and I think the interesting thing, recruiting used to be kind of like a zero-sum game. Like either if you finish second, who cares? You did not land the player, and it's like finishing. And some of your hardcore maybe negative fans would say, well, I don't care if you finish second. If you finish second, that is the same as finishing 8th.
You're the first loser.
Yeah, you didn't land him. What good does it do to finish second? You can't make that argument anymore. Even if you believe, I didn't necessarily believe that argument in the first place, but if you did, you can't make that argument anymore because now you're seeing players who hit the portal, and whenever they do, some of the first places they're going, the first places they're going to kind of reach out to is going to be, hey, I know this coach from the recruiting process at that school, and I'm going to reach out to him and see if there's some interest. And I think, in the past, maybe when somebody doesn't pick your school, you even see coaches not handling it very well. Well, that can actually hurt you down the road if you didn't at least continue. You don't even have to continue talking to the kid necessarily if he wants to be left alone, but you want it to be a cordial sort of breakup almost when a prospect picks another school.
Yeah. 803-404-6100. Love Chevy phone line, text line, however you guys want to be a part of the show. Please hit us there or on Twitter at Pearson Fowler, at Wes Mitchell GC. One more recruiting question as we wrap things up here on the Gamecock Central Hour next.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
11:51 Friday morning. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Pearson Fowler, Wes Mitchell here with you for the Gamecock Central Hour here on 107.5 The Game. The rain finally is slowing. South Carolina practicing this afternoon, probably still going to be indoors, but the second full pads practice of the 2022 season. So excited to see what that looks like for the Gamecocks. I have a random recruiting question for you. But first,
I'm ready, I hope.
Well, I mean, you know how much I like to put you guys on the spot. Before we get to that, though, I want to remind everybody one of the great sponsors of what you guys do here on the Gamecock Central Hour on 107.5 The Game is Integrated Media.
Yeah, man. We're excited about having Integrated Media. Not only is our sponsor for this show, they actually were our first sponsor of Gamecock Central on 107.5. They sponsored our call-ins earlier this year, and now a official sponsor of the Gamecock Central Takeover. Give them a call, 803-948-8327. They're located in Chapin, but pretty much servicing all the Midlands. And again, I've been warning everybody, Pearson, get your man cave ready. You are running out of time. You don't want to have your friends over and your TV's just, a little bit too small. Maybe the surround sound's not working. And you definitely don't want your Hulu Live or your YouTube TV buffering during the game. Like that's the pits. That's bad, man. They're not going to come back to your house for the next game if you're buffering. So Integrated Media, that's integratedmediainc.com. Any of these issues, any of these things that concern you, they'll take care of you.
That's Integrated Media. Wes, the hype videos. We played a segment of Tree Babalade's announcement video that he posted on Twitter. And Pup Howard, whom we've been talking about, who's doing a terrific job recruiting on behalf of South Carolina, posted a cool graphic with all the guys that he is trying to encourage to commit to South Carolina. Do they do their own graphics? Do they have their social teams, or does Carolina put those things together for them / with them? Okay,
I'm going to try to give you the answer.
All right.
So there's a new rule in place. It used to be that schools could not send personalized videos to prospects. So there could not be direct involvement. And you would see kids, sometimes players would even they'd be videoing campus visit stuff on their phone. Mm-hmm. And then they would leave campus and they'd send it to somebody online, and they'd throw it together for them. And it would have to be somebody not affiliated with South Carolina. There's a new rule that says schools can send recruiting content that is personalized with the player's name, image, however they want to do
them in the Gamecock jerseys and helmets. And
yeah, and it can be a video. You used to not be able to do the videos. So I believe that opens things up for South Carolina to help with the commit videos, which is probably what happened with the tree.
Well, because players have these all the times now, and in professional sports, you see it all the time where it's like, hey, this trade just happened, and here's a quick Photoshop of this player in a, Spurs jersey or whatever. I've just noticed a lot more of it in recent years, and it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, obviously, these are kids that grew up with the internet, so if they're savvy enough and can do Photoshop and edit video and all that stuff, I'm not going to be surprised. But there's a uniformity to it. It's so in line with all the specific marketing and branding the university has in place already. I didn't know if it was just...
It's on brand, right? It's 100% on brand.
Yeah, but I didn't know if it was hey, player X is doing it because he knows this is the university's branding, or if Justin King and crew were... Like for the Babalade video, did he cut that himself? Did Justin help him with that? Was it a third party? Do you know?
I don't know, but I think, again, there, and looking at the video... looking at the Pup Howard video, and I think Pup even tweeted, Justin King is the GOAT or something like that after. So I think there's much more involvement now than there once was.
Craig just hit us in the text line, says Reno, that is Dante Reno, the quarterback prospect, said Pup Howard did his own graphic of the tree inside Williams-Brice on Twitter. I did see that. That one looked like a little more of an obvious Photoshop. That was a good one, though. We're just like peak content right now. We've talked about the Shane Beamer hype video, the video of him giving the speech to his team up in the upper deck that came out yesterday or whatever. But
that was good.
That was good.
I like
players.
that.
I'm just saying, peak content, like the stuff, and specifically the universities churning out for the players, for the coaches, for the fans is man, that stuff's good.
They got to be busy too. Kudos to those guys, man. Creative media team over there at South Carolina.
They're so good at what they do.
They're just churning it out though.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of man hours to put that stuff together. But kudos to them again. And they don't miss though. It's good. I really thought, the Beamer video at the top of Willie B. Was that yesterday? It came out.
Yeah, I think so.
That was cool. That was a cool message.
It was a good message. Definitely, he was telling the players that. But I kind of started the show with this, but that's that video right there. As much as he was talking to the players, that was for the fans. Which is great. That's part of what Shane Beamer has to do. He knows. And again, that was one of the other interesting notes from watching Welcome Home Wednesday night. Justin King just being yeah, Shane just gets it. And that's another example. Does that mean Carolina's going to win 9 games this year? Nope. But does that mean a heck of a lot to all the fans that are, watching that? It's it's the speech at the end of Braveheart? Absolutely.
I look at all that stuff as a way to augment your on-field production. If you win 2 games and then you do all that stuff, then fans kind of start to roll there. We saw it with the uniform videos.
Yeah, people used to love them, and by the end they hated them.
Yeah, people loved them, and man, we started. We would when it came out, we had a story every Thursday when it came out. Hey, South Carolina is gonna wear this, and this, and we'd embed the video. It's one of the most clicked things we had.
Yeah,
but then by the end, people are going,
"Yeah,
who cares about the uniforms?"
Mm-hmm. All right, we ran a little long here. That's going to be part of our random recruiting question of the day segment that I want to start, just putting you guys on the spot with random questions. So appreciate the information there. We are out of time, though. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday after South Carolina scrimmage and with some thoughts after getting to watch practice with our own eyeballs today. So y'all have a great weekend, and the halftime show is coming up next.